this video, I'm gonna share the 3 biggest hacks to help you make your first photo book that I learned from making my own first photo book. Hey, my name is Matt and I'm a street photographer, and on this channel, we talk about all things related to street photography. In another video, I summarized the steps I took in making my first photo book. That video was pretty high level. It was kind of like a quick start guide to making a photo book. But today I'm gonna get real nitty gritty and share the biggest hacks that I learned that speak to both abstract ideas and also lay them down as practical tips that you can use right away. Hack number 1 is to do it for someone that you love. If you don't have an idea, then just make one for someone you love, whether that's your partner, a friend, or your family member. Give yourself the deadline of giving them this gift on their birthday or Christmas or Valentine's Day or like an anniversary or birth. I guess that's birthday. And let me tell you, whatever the result is, it's gonna be awesome. You're gonna end up making something that's thoughtful, something that's made and possibly expensive depending on how much you spend, but it's gonna be so personalized that the recipient is gonna love it no matter what. And it also takes pressure off yourself, because by making it for somebody else, you don't have to do something innovative. Like, you don't have to come up with an idea that's never before seen. And I just said that it might be expensive, but because you're only giving it to somebody else, it's only going to be 1 copy, 2 copies max to print if you want to keep one for yourself. This really is my biggest tip because it is the most actionable and it is the most real with a hard deadline. It will make you look like a complete asshole if you don't do it, and you will feel bad about yourself if you say that you're gonna make a photo book for someone really close to you but end up not doing it. Just imagine that their birthday rolls around and you come over empty-handed or with a subpar gift when you know you could have done something great. But I know some of you might be saying, but Matt, I haven't taken photos of my family recently, or I don't have photos of my boyfriend or girlfriend or my friend. I'm gonna just tell you you're welcome, because I just gave you a golden, guaranteed, certified AAA plus idea for your friend's next birthday or next Christmas or whatever. And guess what? This idea is infinitely repeatable. So like and subscribe or fuck whatever. Hack number 2 is to optimize your preview photos for your publisher's editing tool. So you can do this by exporting your files with a named sequence like friend-photobook-1, friend-photobook-2, and have it out as a sequence, because when you upload photos, some editors are not up to date in 2022. They're kind of backwards and just don't get a lot of love for whatever reason at those companies. So you're gonna be working with a lot of like funky and wonky technology that has like just like a crap user experience possibly. Some of the naming functionality in some of these publishing tools are really weird, so you can get around this by making sure your photos are already named and sequenced appropriately. The second part of this is to resize your images, and you can do that, I recommend, by resizing by percentage. And in some editors like Adobe Lightroom, you can edit the quality of the export. So lower all those. By doing that, you'll save time, 1, exporting your photos, and then 2, uploading said photos to your publisher's editing tool, because that will take a long time. And if you have slow internet while trying to upload files in the gigabytes, you're gonna be there for a while. And if so, you might as well just pull up another video of mine to watch or something. This will honestly save you up to hours of time if you're going back and forth editing, and it makes for previewing and messing around with the layouts that much easier. I think I reduced mine from about 2 to 5 gigabytes down to less than 100 megabytes for about, I think it was 100 photos. And when you're going through the process and maybe editing the selects that you have and want to bring in more photos or take out photos, this will save you a lot of time. The third hack is to think of your book like a movie. And like any movie, there is an aspect of scripting and planning to it. So you got to ask yourself, what is the journey that you want to take your audience on? For example, when I was doing my research on how other artists approach making photo books, this one artist, Leah Abril, she said, what's the journey you want your reader to go through? Do you want him to know everything already? Do you want him to be confused? Do you want him to get emotional? You play with the content depending on what you want the reader to feel. This process sounds exactly like any type of storytelling. What's the valley and trows? What are the highs and lows? What is the roller coaster ride that you want to take the reader on? But the quirky thing about making a photo book is that while we're scripting, we already have the scenes shot. We have footage, right? These are the photos that we're working with. So by coming up with a plot, with a 3-act narrative or any type of story, we can start to put those scenes in the right places. So in my other video, I mentioned that my photo book was about my girlfriend, and I wanted to take her on a journey where she could see herself the way I saw her. And it took me a couple of runs through all my photos to pick out the right scenes, but after I started thinking about the photo book as a movie, it got a lot easier. When I started thinking this way and approached all the photos that I had, I started looking for photos that to me were critical scenes or like key moments that I was like, okay, this needs to happen if this were a movie, like this action needs to happen. And that served as a way to help pick out some photos that ultimately helped to serve the narrative. And something interesting that I've been doing for a lot of my anything storytelling related is starting at the end, which is what I also happen to do with my photo book. Also low-key, it was easier to do that because for my story, my photos were going to be in a linear, like chronological order. And so anything that happened in Act 3 were photos that I shot recently. So I was much more attuned to like, okay, I know what I shot. Oh yeah, I remember that. Like that just happened a few weeks ago or 2 months ago or something. To give you some context, a quick rundown of my story as an example is basically I've been with my girlfriend for about a little bit over a year. My story, how it happened in terms of scenes or locations, is basically we met. Like this is not thinking about the 3-act structure yet, but this is just thinking about like, oh, what events happened in our relationship so far in terms of like location. We met in Taiwan, we went back to the US, and we went back to Taiwan again. And this whole thing spanned a little bit over a year. I basically was like, that's a perfect 3-act structure right there. Like we met, we did these things, and now we're back where we started. But us as people, specifically her, from when I first met her and what I thought of her to having been with her for over a year, that's different now. That's my narrative right there. That's my 3rd act. We're back in this place where we first met. I started comparing photos from that time to when we first met, and I noticed a lot of new things, like photos that showed more of her personality, of anybody's personality, that takes time to get comfortable and show. It just takes time, right? I noticed by going through those photos in this 3rd act that, wow, like these are sides of my partner that weren't necessarily at the forefront or showed themselves when we first met. By starting at the end, I easily moved back to the beginning, Act 1, when we first met, and I was like, okay, how did I see her when we first met? And that helped me filter out photos and picked photos for Act 1. And now I have Act 3 and Act 1 pretty much set up. Now I just have to fill in the middle. I said there were 3 hacks. This is like part 2 of the 3rd hack. Like any movie, there is scripting, but then there is also editing. Editing would be sequencing for a photo book. And I want to share with you what this one artist who is a prolific book designer and bookmaker who works with photographers to help craft their work, what he has to say about making books and sequencing and editing, because he said it's so much better than how I could say it. This guy, I'm a butcher his name for sure, Ten van der Hegden, says that if you simply select the best 50 images in a series, it's not an interesting book because the tension in the photos is always the same. So I just shared the example of my own book and the set of images that I was gonna pick from. But what he's talking about is really how do you actually now go and from those images put them one after another to create a journey for the audience. He says, like in a film or a novel, you have to build up to the tension and then you need to release the tension. An interesting thing he does is that he typically begins by asking to see the photographer's outtakes. He says, sometimes lesser quality images that capture a certain mood or empty or even vague can function ideally as a release. And it's after reading about this guy's perspective and experiences making photo books that I realized I had made mistakes. I talk about in another video, but basically on my first pass, I selected all the best, what I thought were banger photos visually, like great composition, just so much happening and like, just, Yes. But because of that, the tension was always high and the book felt stagnant. It was just going like 100 miles per hour and it wasn't like a ride or like an experience. And Van der Heijden really opened up my eyes to how sequencing photos is very much like video editing or film editing. If you have a couple of people in one photo and then another photo has one person in it, you can use that as a kind of zoom in effect, even if it's a different person in the second photo. Or when one photo is one thing and the very next photo is something completely different, he even compares that to a quick cut, which totally makes sense. So one thing I was doing when I was making my photo book and trying to craft this story was doing things like thinking of it as a video. Some parts of the book I would start, actually all parts of the book, I would start when a location change happened. For example, I would start with some wide shots, some scene setting shots, some shots that weren't necessarily visually beautiful, but they got the point across and told the story of like, oh, this is what the vibe is like, this is what the vibe is like, or this is what the atmosphere is, and oh, it's a scene change, or like we're out at some different place now. See, it's a cut to a new location. And then maybe the wide shot goes into a tighter shot of now my partner doing something specific. And then maybe it goes into a close-up shot. And then it comes back out and we change scenes again. That's one way I was doing it. And at the same time, I was asking myself like, all right, for one photo, what does it make me feel? Like from 0 to 100, or if I just had to draw a point on a graph, what energy or emotion level is this making me feel? Like, is it a very intense situation or is it pretty calming? Like, is she chilling at the beach, looking out into the ocean, or are we on like a roller coaster and my nipples out and I'm like looking at my camera or something? But then comparing that to the next photo, like, okay, where does this land on the scale of intensity? By doing that, you can start to craft highs and lows and actually take not only your reader on a journey, but while you're editing this, having fun and taking yourself on a journey. If you found these hacks helpful, then I recommend checking out my other video that was more of a high-level guide on steps I took in making my first photo book, or this video that goes into the mistakes I made while doing this that hopefully you can avoid and save yourself a bunch of time. Peace. Take yourself on a ride.